Don't look in the mirror in the rest stop bathroom, even if the binder says to verify the fixtures. My eyes lifted anyway at 2:17 a.m., and the fluorescent buzz cut out like someone pinched the sound between two fingers. A missing reflection feels like a joke until the door locks behind you. Tile smell hit first, then cold air from an overworked vent, and I told myself it was just another overnight route stop because my scanner would flag me absent if I didn't ping the tag on sink 3. The shop wanted 600 and change by morning to keep my car from dying at every red light, which is why I stayed on probation with a job that sends a person to bathrooms nobody wants to think about. Glass filled the wall above the sinks, a wide mirror with a dull aluminum frame, and the problem wasn't that the mirror was dirty. The problem was that the mirror held the room perfectly, held the sinks perfectly, held the stall doors perfectly, and left out the one thing that should have been easiest to capture: me. A latch clicked behind my shoulder, and the push bar on the restroom door went rigid. Panic tries to look rational when it has nowhere to go, so my first thought was the door closer had swung shut and the lock had caught. My second thought was worse because it was professional. The lock had moved like it got an instruction. The little red indicator in the handle window showed occupied, the kind of thing meant for a single-user restroom, not a row of stalls at a highway rest area. Shame does dumb math in the dark. I had falsified 2 stops earlier in the week by scanning the exterior QR plates and never stepping inside, because nobody likes the smell and nobody likes the paperwork. And I told myself it was harmless because the place was always empty after midnight anyway. Standing there with my hands damp from the sink, watching a mirror erase me, I felt the lie come back like it had been waiting in the pipes. A maintenance closet sat 2 steps left of the sinks. The door painted the same institutional beige as everything else, and I kept my eyes down while I dug my badge out. Thumb found the edge of the plastic twice, an old habit from a different job where doors punished hesitation, and I muttered my little line under my breath. "That's not ideal," badge reader chirped once. Green light came on, and the closet opened into a smell of old paper, cleanser, and something sharp like ozone coming off a cheap power strip. A binder rested on the top shelf with a coffee ring dried into the cover, and the spine label had been retaped so many times the plastic looked cloudy. Somebody had written the revision in marker right on the cover, not as a clean sticker, just a blunt note. Revision 6F, initials that looked like RB, and a date that was recent enough to sting. The binder did not belong to a traveler. It belonged to workers who have to pretend the world is predictable. Paper rasped under my fingers as I opened it, and a laminated card slid out from the inside pocket because the corner had peeled where the lamination failed. The card wasn't a neat list, more like a clipped excerpt from an SOP, and it had that tired official tone that assumes the reader already knows what they're doing and will be punished for not knowing anyway. "The mirror is not a mirror," it said, and the line underneath had a smear where a thumbprint dragged ink. Another line sat right below it, the one my eyes kept trying to dodge and kept returning to like a bruise. "Do not look into the glass. If you do, you do not say your n." The last word had been eaten by the coffee ring and the lamination peel, so it ended as n, and my brain filled it in wrong, because brains always do that when they're scared. I read it as same, like it was warning against repeating a phrase, repeating a call sign, repeating a code. The mirror behind me waited with the room reflected cleanly, and my chest tightened because I had already looked. Denial made a little voice in my head that sounded like my supervisor on a bad day, all clipped consonants and policy. It isn't supernatural. It's a safety retrofit. It's a camera. It's facial recognition. It's training. A small circle on the bottom edge of the mirror frame caught my peripheral vision, and I registered it without thinking. A clear tamper dot, the kind inspectors place across a seam to prove something hasn't been opened. 3 pinpricks sat in it like somebody stabbed it with a thumbtack out of boredom. My hand hovered over the binder, and the room went quieter than a restroom should. Silence in public places is never total. There's always a fan, a hum, a distant highway hiss through concrete. That night, something removed the hum the way a person pulls a sheet off furniture, and my skin lifted along my arms because the absence felt targeted. I didn't want to face the mirror again, but I needed a plan that wasn't just waiting for morning with an occupied lock and no reflection. The card had more on it, and my eyes moved fast, greedy for instructions, like instructions could replace judgment. If the door indicates occupied after 1:30 a.m., do not override. Record the condition. Wait for the indicator to clear on its own. If the restroom camera feed freezes, you do not reboot the monitor. You cover the mirror and print the last frame. If a member of the public requests help inside the restroom, you escort them out without turning them toward the glass. A final line sat at the bottom in a different font size, like it had been pasted from an email and photocopied one too many times. If your reflection is missing, sanitize the glass and verify under full light before escalating. That last one looked like relief, like permission, like a normal fix. It also read like a trap dressed as competence. My radio crackled in my pocket, and the sudden sound made my shoulders jump because I'd forgotten it existed. The contractor gave us cheap handhelds for dead zones where cell service drops, and mine had been half useless all month, which is why I'd started cutting corners in the first place. A voice came through, thin and tired. "Route check. You at stop 12? Ray's voice. Not a friend in my real life, not family, not the kind of relationship people put in framed photos, but the only person on the overnight line who could keep my badge from deactivating if the system decided I missed something. Her name had a way of changing the temperature of my decisions. "Yeah," I said, keeping my gaze on the binder, because I didn't trust my own eyes on glass. "Inside." "Don't say inside," she snapped, then softened like she remembered I wasn't the one who wrote that rule. "Just confirm you scanned the restroom tag, the dashboard showing a gap." A tiny lie rose, automatic. My mouth wanted to say I scanned everything. I did my job, nothing weird happened, and I could go. The other part of me, the part that still believed in paperwork and consequences, wanted to tell her about the mirror. "Scanner's acting up," I said instead, because cowardice prefers technical excuses. "I'm getting it." "Get it and get out," Ray said. Paper shuffling, a keyboard clack, the sound of someone who has to keep a dozen people honest with a system that punishes honesty. The client audits Friday, one more anomaly, and they dump the whole contract. That's not ideal for anyone. There it was, my catchphrase reflected back at me, and it stung because it made the fear feel small, like a personal problem. My thumb rubbed the edge of my badge again, a nervous polish, and I made myself breathe through my nose, even though the restroom air tasted faintly like bleach and metal fixtures. "Door's locked," I admitted. A pause. Ray had the kind of silence that meant she was doing math. "Override it," she said finally, and the way she said it told me she knew it was the wrong instruction. "Use the emergency key. Don't log anything. Just fix it." The The laminated card in my hand had said, "Do not override," and policy had said, "Override," and a mirror had said nothing at all while erasing me. People talk about moral choices like they come with speeches. Mine came with a cheap radio and the thought of my car dying on the shoulder with a tow bill I couldn't afford. The emergency key hung in the closet, thick and older than my badge, and it sat on a tag with a code stamped into it, RS-12A. Somebody had scratched the code with a knife like they didn't trust ink to last. Cold metal bit my fingers as I pulled it free, and the sound the key made against the ring echoed too loud in the quiet. I took 2 steps to the door, eyes still down, and slid the key into the override slot beneath the push bar. The key turned smooth, too smooth, like the lock wanted me to do it. The indicator window flicked from occupied to vacant, and the push bar softened under my palm again. Relief came hot and stupid, and I almost laughed. Then the mirror caught the movement anyway, and the fluorescent buzz returned with a tiny stutter like it was syncing to a signal, and my reflection still wasn't there. Something under my skin argued that the rule wasn't about looking, it was about being noticed. The practical move was to leave. The competent move was to document. The human move was to do both and fail at each. I backed into the closet to grab the binder, because if I was going to break a rule, I'd rather break it with evidence in my hands, and the paper felt heavier than it should. A page near the back had a toner-faded printout tucked into it, the kind of office email somebody printed because they didn't trust the thread to stay in the inbox. The top line in the printout, embedded in the sentence like a bruise, made my stomach pinch. The email subject read, "Optics Module Retrofit, Rest Area Restrooms, Revision 3B." Routed through a folder path the contractor used for client-facing updates, and the initials at the bottom were different. JH, not RB. I didn't have time to read it fully, because the restroom door swung inward on its own, slow and polite, as if someone had pushed it from the outside. Footsteps stopped on the tile just beyond the threshold. A man cleared his throat, and it sounded wrong in the dead air, too close to the mirror, too close to the silence. "Hello?" he called. "Anybody in there?" Every instinct said, "Keep him out." Every decent part of me said, "Don't let a stranger wander into a locked room with a wall that won't reflect people." The laminated card had a line for this, and my eyes flashed to it like a prayer. If a member of the public requests help inside the restroom, you escort them out without turning them toward the glass. That line mattered because it assumed I could still escort anyone. It assumed the mirror hadn't already decided the rules were mine to break. "Maintenance," I called back, and the word tasted like authority I didn't deserve. "Restrooms closed. You need the other side of the building." "The other side is locked," the man said, and his voice carried that edge of irritation travelers get when a place built for them refuses to function. "I just need to wash up. I'm driving through." I should have lied harder. I should have told him the plumbing was out. Instead, guilt chose for me, because guilt loves to make amends in the worst possible way. "Hold on," I said, and stepped forward. The mirror stayed in my peripheral, and I kept my eyes down, but the presence of another person in that room changed the air. It warmed, not physically, but socially, like the space remembered it was supposed to be public. The man shuffled in, boots squeaking, and I saw him only as a pair of jeans and a jacket hem because I refused to lift my gaze. "I got locked in," I said. "Just keep your eyes down." He snorted like I'd said something ridiculous, then stopped, and his breath hitched. The sound of his inhale went sharp, and I felt it in my own throat because fear is contagious. "Man," he whispered, and I didn't like the way he said it. Where's your face?" My stomach dropped because he wasn't talking to me. He was looking at the mirror, and the mirror was doing what it did best, keeping the room, leaving out the person. "Don't," I snapped, louder than I meant, and the word bounced off tile. "Don't look in it." The man took one step backward, and his boots scuffed the floor in a way that made my teeth ache. He wasn't a kid, wasn't vulnerable in the way the rules warned about, just an adult who expected a mirror to behave and got punished for trusting it. "I ain't superstitious," he said, and the bravado sounded thin. But I looked, and I didn't see me. That's not ideal. I almost laughed again, and it came out as a dry exhale because hearing my phrase in his mouth felt like the building was copying me. The laminated card didn't mention what to do if someone else looked, but the binder did have an escalation note in the margins, a pencil scrawl like a tired confession. Second glance counts. My mind grabbed that like a lifesaver, a count-based rule, a quota, a line in the sand. I could work with that. "Listen," I told him, and forced my voice steady, because if I sounded panicked, he'd do something stupid. "Back out, slow, keep your head down. I'm going to walk you out." The man hesitated, then complied, and his eyes stayed on the sink handles like the chrome might explain itself. His hand shook when he touched the push bar, and that made my own hand sweat because it meant the mirror had gotten under his skin fast. The door opened cleanly, and cool corridor air spilled in, smelling faintly of vending machine snacks and mop water. The man stepped into the hall, then turned like he wanted to say something to me, and I lifted my gaze without thinking, because humans look at each other when they need reassurance. The mirror caught that moment, and the fluorescent buzz hiccuped again, and my radio in my pocket clicked like it had received a transmission without sound. My reflection didn't appear. Instead, the mirror showed the man behind me perfectly, and where my face should have been, it showed empty tile. The man swore and stumbled back into the hall, and I followed, and the restroom door shut behind me with a soft click, like a decision. Ray's voice returned, strained. "What did you do?" "I didn't log anything," I said, too fast, because I thought she was accusing me of paperwork. "Someone came in. He looked. I told him not to." "You let the public in?" Her disbelief had a tired edge, like she'd been holding the line for too long, and my mistake would be the one that broke it. "Why would you?" "Because he was going to walk in anyway," I snapped, then regretted it because anger is just fear with teeth. My thumb rubbed my badge again. "The other restroom is locked." A new sound came through the radio then, not Ray, not static, but the faintest chime, like a cheap notification tone that didn't belong on a handheld. It repeated twice, spaced evenly, and it made the hair on my arm stand up because it sounded like a system acknowledgement. "Ray," I said, and my voice went smaller. "The mirror, it isn't reflecting." Silence on the line, not a normal pause, but a dead cut, as if the channel had been muted. I shook the radio once, then twice, the stress reflex switching from badge to hardware, and the display lit up with a number I didn't recognize. No signal bars, no battery warning, just a single letter that shouldn't have been there. W. The hallway lights hummed again, and the vending machine compressor kicked on like nothing had happened, and my breathing felt too loud. I looked down the corridor toward the lobby, toward the warm circle of the front doors and the big windows that faced the highway, and all I could think was that my route scanner still hadn't been satisfied. Sink 3 still hadn't been pinged. The system still wanted proof I had been inside. A small placard on the wall by the restroom doors had the restroom fixture code printed on it, and beneath it, someone had added a second sticker, off-center like a quick patch. RS12, then a slash, then O for optics. It wasn't pretty enough to be official. My scanner chimed when I held it up to the Sink 3 tag through the open restroom door, and the beep was loud enough to feel like relief. The display flashed green and showed the time logged, and that should have been the end of it. The display also flashed the word witness, and my throat went tight because that wasn't a standard status code. A man passed behind me in the hall, maybe the same traveler, maybe someone else, and I turned to check and saw only empty corridor. Footsteps had sounded real. The hallway was empty. I had a choice then that didn't feel like a choice. Leave and pretend this was stress and bad lighting, or step back into the restroom and get the only evidence that mattered. The mirror, the camera, the binder, whatever mechanism made a space erase people. My feet moved before my brain could negotiate, and the restroom door swung open again, and tile smell welcomed me like a punishment. The mirror waited. Cold came off it like it wasn't glass at all. I didn't put my eyes on it, not fully, but peripheral vision is still vision, and the lack where I should have been tugged at me like gravity. I kept my gaze on the sinks and forced myself to treat the room like a scene, like an inspection, because competence is the only thing I own when fear wants everything else. The first sink had a crack in the porcelain glaze shaped like a lightning bolt. The second had a paper towel shoved in the drain. Sink 3 had a little plastic tag under the lip with a code molded into it, 3C-14, and I hated that it matched the example of a badge ID I'd seen in training because it made the moment feel staged. A reflection is a simple promise. The room is the room, and you are in it. That wall broke the promise. My eyes drifted up despite myself, and I stopped short of the mirror, close enough to see smudges, close enough to see the tamper dot with its 3 pinpricks, close enough to see that the aluminum frame had been unscrewed once and refastened because one screw head was stripped. The laminated card had said sanitize and verify under full light. The part of me that wanted normal grabbed that line again. Clean the mirror, force the reflection, make it obey physics. The smarter part of me, the part that had survived other night shifts, heard the line in a different voice. Second glance counts. A pen sat on the maintenance cart by the closet, and I snapped the cap off with my teeth, then froze because the card's smeared line came back to me. If you do not say your name, not same, name. I didn't say my name. I didn't even think it in a clear way. I just wrote on a scrap of paper from the binder pocket, quick block letters, do not look, keep eyes down. I don't know why those words came, except they felt like something somebody else had already tried to say. The act of writing made me feel better for half a second, and then the pen tip squeaked against paper in the silence, and the squeak sounded too much like a small animal in a trap. A cough came from inside one of the stalls. Not a throat clear, not a traveler annoyance. A deep, wet cough, the kind that rattles. I turned toward the stall row, and my eyes rose without permission, and the mirror caught the motion like a camera catching movement. My reflection did not appear. The stall door at the far end, the one with the broken latch that never quite closed right, had a shadow under it that shifted as if someone adjusted their feet. I took one step, then another, and my badge lanyard tapped against my chest like it was counting. "Hello?" My voice came out thin. "Maintenance, are you okay in there?" No answer, just a second cough, and then a sound that didn't belong in a restroom at all. Paper turning, a slow, deliberate flip, like someone reading a page in a quiet library, and it made my stomach twist because there was no book in that room, and no reason paper should turn inside a closed stall. That sound stayed with me later, too clean to dismiss, too specific to call imagination. I stopped near the sinks instead of approaching, because a stall is a threshold and thresholds matter. The laminated card had a line about escorting the public out, but it assumed the person would speak and move, not hide and cough and turn pages. My radio clicked back to life with a sudden burst of Ray's voice, and I flinched because it came loud after the quiet. "Whatever you're doing, stop," she said. "My screen just populated your badge in the employee roster for RS-12. That isn't possible. You don't have that clearance." "That's not ideal," I whispered, and the phrase tasted like surrender. "I called the supervisor," Ray went on, and I heard her breathing, fast now. "He told me to tell you to follow the mirror protocol exactly. He said it's a client test." A theory landed in my head like a rock. A test, a compliance trap, a way to find out which workers break rules so they can be replaced without severance, without argument, without anyone noticing. The other theory was harder to admit because it made my skin crawl. The mirror wasn't a policy tool. It was a thing that fed on attention, a witness that punished being seen. Both theories felt possible in a bathroom with no reflection. "What did the supervisor say?" I asked. Ray hesitated, and I hated the pause because it told me she was choosing words. "He said sanitize the glass and verify under full light," she said, and her tone turned brittle. "He said if you escalate without doing that, you'll be in breach of the clause, the one you signed, the penalty clause. Secondary debt, legal risk, laid gently on my shoulders like a hand pushing me down. I could picture the PDF, the language about proprietary systems, the threat of fees that would ruin me. I could also picture the man who'd walked in earlier and seen himself vanish. A new sound came from the stall row, not cough this time, but a soft knock. 3 taps, spaced like a rhythm. The tamper dot on the mirror caught the overhead light, and the 3 pinpricks in it looked like eyes. I didn't notice it then that the pinpricks were aligned, not random, like they'd been punched to mark a lens location, and that thought would have saved me if I'd trusted it sooner. The knock came again, and it wasn't a request. It was an insistence. My hand found the sanitizer bottle on the cart, the one with the blue label and the sharp citrus smell, and I held it like it was a weapon, even though it was just chemicals. A competent person would sanitize. A scared person would follow the instruction, because instructions are easier than thinking. A decent person would check the stall. The moral dilemma didn't arrive with a speech. It arrived with 3 options that all felt like losing. If I sanitized the mirror, I might trigger whatever the rule was hiding, and I might also satisfy the supervisor and keep Ray out of trouble. If I ignored the mirror and checked the stall, I might be walking toward an injured adult who needed help, and I might also be walking toward whatever made paper turn in a locked space. If I left right now, I could save myself and protect my contract, and I would also be abandoning a person behind a door that might not open again. Ray's voice came quieter. "Please, just do what he said. I can't cover this." My throat tightened because she wasn't asking for herself. She was asking because the system would punish her first. If my badge turned into a ghost badge on her dashboard, she'd be the one answering for it. The knock came a third time, and then the stall door latch clicked, like fingers testing. I made my choice with my eyes down and my feet moving, because if I stopped, I'd choose wrong. "Ray," I said, and forced steadiness into my voice. "I'm going to check the stall. Log that I attempted contact. If they come for you, tell them I overrode it. Put it on me." A pro-social rule break sounds heroic in movies. In a restroom, it just sounds like a person deciding who gets hurt first. I stepped to the stall row and crouched, keeping my face angled away from the mirror, and pressed my palm against the tile near the bottom of the door. The tile was colder there, like the floor hadn't warmed it, and my skin prickled because the temperature change felt like a boundary. "Hey," I said, and my voice shook despite me. "Can you unlock it? Are you sick?" The latch clicked again, and I heard the faintest inhale from inside, too controlled for a panicked traveler. A low voice answered, not loud, not pleading, just flat. "Say your name." My stomach dropped because the smeared line on the laminated card slammed into my head, clear now. "If you do not say your name." The voice from the stall repeated, still calm. "Say your name, then you can leave." I backed up fast enough to scrape my heel on the tile, and pain shot up my ankle, and the normal physical consequence felt like a gift because it meant my body still existed. My thumb found my badge again, rubbed it like a worry stone, and my mouth stayed shut because names have power in systems, even human ones. "That's not ideal," I whispered, and the phrase came out as a prayer. The mirror behind me made no sound, but the fluorescent buzz changed pitch slightly, like a machine adjusting to a new load. I retreated to the closet and grabbed the binder, because evidence was all I had, and the printed email with the optic subject line trembled in my hand. The toner on the page was faded, but the middle paragraph held a line that made my scalp itch. It talked about witness continuity, about maintaining occupancy deterrence, about an optics module that logged faces for safety analytics. It also mentioned something that didn't belong in a facilities update. Non-compliant staff may be reassigned to fulfill vacancy coverage, it said, in that bland corporate way that hides cruelty behind verbs. Reassigned. The mirror wasn't erasing my reflection as a spooky trick. It was removing me from the category of traveler and placing me into the category of vacancy coverage, because I had looked, because I had been noticed, because my face had become a data point. The human explanation and the other explanation twisted together until they were the same. A system can be a monster when it has permission. My radio crackled with Ray again, and this time her voice was doubled, like an echo a half-second behind her words. "I just got a ticket auto-generated," she said. "Not from the client system, from ours. It says restroom camera anomaly resolved. Closed by user witness." "I didn't close anything," I snapped, and anger flooded because it was easier than terror. "I'm standing here." "I know," Ray said. "That's why I'm scared. The closure timestamp is earlier than your check-in. It's like it knew you would." Her voice cut out mid-sentence, and a new tone replaced it. That cheap notification chime again. 2 notes, then 3. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It felt occupied. A printer sat in the maintenance alcove down the hall, the kind used to spit out inspection receipts for the client audit binder, and I ran to it because paper is proof, and proof is leverage. The corridor lights flickered once, and for a split second, the glass window at the lobby end caught my peripheral. The lobby window reflected the hall. It reflected the vending machines. It reflected the restrooms. It did not reflect me. My feet hit the alcove, and I yanked open the printer tray and slapped in paper with shaking hands. My breath sounded loud in my ears, and my stress reflex shifted to counting without meaning to, tapping the paper stack twice against the tray edge like a ritual. The printer warmed, the little fan inside whining, and then it printed a single page. The page came out blank except for one thing, a faint gray rectangle the size of a camera frame, and inside it, 3 small dots arranged like the pinpricks on the mirror tamper seal. In the center of the rectangle, a silhouette stood where I should have been, faceless and narrow, as if someone had cut a person out of a photograph and left a void. A competence win came with a cost. The moment the paper landed in my hand, my phone buzzed, and I glanced down. No signal. That was normal out here sometimes, but the screen also showed a new notification from the contractor route app, and the wording made my stomach drop. Route complete. Employee assigned. Assigned to what? To the restroom? To vacancy coverage? To the mirror? I shoved the printout into the binder pocket and walked back toward the restroom with my eyes down, because leaving without doing something felt like letting the system keep a trophy. The hallway hum returned. The vending machine hissed. The place pretended to be normal, and that pretending made it worse. Graffiti on the wall near the restroom entrance had always been there, a mess of names and crude drawings scratched into paint. One line stood out now because the fresh scratches were bright white against beige, and the words weren't a name. Keep eyes down. Seeing it made my chest tighten, because it matched the words I'd written on scrap paper, like they had been waiting for me to catch up. It also made the echo phrase feel older than me, older than my job, older than any contract. A new addition sat under the graffiti, smaller, almost hidden. There is no safe glass. I did not start a sentence with those words in my head, but I felt them all the same. The restroom door stood ajar, and the indicator window showed vacant. The normal thing would be relief. The abnormal thing was the way the door held itself open, just wide enough to invite. A silence beat hit again as I stepped over the threshold, and this time even my own footsteps sounded muffled, like the tile absorbed sound instead of reflecting it. Mirror glass held the room, and the tamper dot gleamed. The stall at the far end stood open. No cough, no page turn, no person. A wet handprint smeared the inside of the stall door at shoulder height, and the print had too many fingers. I didn't lean into supernatural interpretations, not because I'm brave, but because I know how many ways a person can miscount in bad light. Still, I stared at the shape, and my stomach turned because the edges were too clean, like a stamp. On the mirror, for the first time, something moved that wasn't in the room. A shoulder turned, a head tilted, a motion like a person checking an angle. The motion belonged to me, except I wasn't in the mirror. The mirror showed the room, and it showed a version of me that stood half a step behind where I actually was, angled wrong, as if the camera lens had shifted. That was tier 2 of wrongness, and it forced a decision because it meant the mirror wasn't just failing to reflect me, it was generating me. My hand went to the sanitizer bottle again, and the citrus smell spiked when I squeezed the trigger by accident. A spray misted the air, and tiny droplets landed on my knuckles cold, and the instant the droplets touched my skin, the mirror's generated version of me lifted its head. The smeared line on the laminated card finally resolved in my mind, not as a guess, but as an instruction that had been trying to save me. If you do not say your name. The stall voice had asked for my name. The email talked about reassignment. The ticket closure had been signed witness. A system needed a label to move me from one category to another, and a name is the cleanest label. Ray's earlier instruction came back, and I heard the fear under it now. Follow the mirror protocol exactly. Sanitize and verify under full light. That line was the trap rule. It sounded safe because it sounded professional. It was also a test of obedience that required me to interact with the glass. My brain finally did what it should have done at the start. It treated the mirror like a device. The tamper dot with 3 pinpricks wasn't just a seal, it was a lens cover. Those pinpricks were apertures. Somebody had punched them to let the camera see while still pretending the seam was sealed. I didn't notice it then. It didn't register until later. Right then, I noticed it enough to act. I tore the scrap paper from my pocket, the one that said, "Do not look, keep eyes down," and slapped it over the tamper dot with my palm flat. Paper stuck for a second, then slid because humidity in restrooms defeats everything. The mirror's generated version of me jerked, not like a person, more like a video feed skipping frames. Fluorescent buzz returned, high and angry, and the restroom door behind me clicked to occupied again. Resource loss rotated. Access, again. I backed out fast and hit the push bar. It didn't budge. A voice came from the stall row, not from behind a door this time, but from the room itself, and it was my voice, filtered like a recording played through a cheap speaker. "Say your name." I swallowed hard, then forced myself to speak without giving it what it wanted. "Maintenance," I said, and the word felt thin. "Employee, route check." The mirror's generated figure shifted closer in the reflection, and for a split second, the head turned farther than a human neck should, 90 degrees without the shoulders moving, like a still frame someone manipulated wrong. That was tier 3 of wrongness, clean enough to describe, unmistakable enough to haunt. I stepped sideways so the mirror could not be in my direct line, and my shoulder bumped the sink, rattling the faucet. The rattle sounded normal, and normal sound felt like oxygen. A thought landed, sharp and simple. Cover the lens, break the witness. The binder pocket held a roll of red out-of-service tape, used for broken fixtures, used for audit photos, used for making a problem look contained. I yanked it free, and the tape stuck to itself like it didn't want to help, and I fought it with shaking hands. Tape snapped loose with a loud rip, and the sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet. I tore a strip and slapped it across the tamper dot, then another strip, then a third, layering until no light could pass through the pinpricks. The mirror's generated version of me froze. The fluorescent buzz steadied. The restroom door indicator window flicked to vacant. 2 seconds of relief hit, concrete and real. The latch softened. The push bar moved under my palm. I took one breath that didn't hurt. Then the mirror did something that made my blood run cold. It gave me back my reflection. My face appeared in the glass, but it was wrong by a fraction, like a photo taken from a slightly different angle. The eyes looked at the tape, not at me. The mouth moved without sound, shaping words I didn't say. Say your name. False resolution tastes sweet for a moment, and then it rots. I didn't say it. I kept my mouth shut and shoved the door open, and corridor air hit my lungs like a rescue. The restroom door slammed behind me, and for half a second, I felt like I'd won something. My scanner beeped in my pocket, a new notification, and the noise yanked my attention down. The contractor app showed a green check mark next to stop 12. It also showed my next assignment, and the words made my stomach turn. Coverage. RS12 restroom. Start now. A system doesn't ask. It assigns. Ray's voice hit my radio again, frantic now, and this time, the echo behind her was stronger, like someone was repeating her words a half-beat late. They just locked me out of the dashboard, she said. It says my access is revoked pending review. Did you log something? Did you print something? Tell me you didn't attach the camera frame. I printed it, I admitted, and guilt burned because my action had cost her. I covered the mirror lens with tape, the door unlocked. What did you cover? Ray asked, and her voice shook. What did you touch? The tamper dot, I said. 3 pinholes, like a lens. A long pause. Paper shuffling. Ray breathing. The supervisor is calling it vandalism, she said finally, and the words came out like she hated them. He says the optics module is client property. He says if you don't remove the tape and complete the verification step, they terminate. Both of us. The clause, the penalty, all of it. The moral dilemma returned, heavier now, because it wasn't just policy versus safety. It was Ray's job versus a system that eats people. It was my contract versus a public restroom that had already tried to take my name. My catchphrase rose again, bitter. That's not ideal. Stop saying that, Ray snapped, then softened. I'm sorry. I'm scared. Listen, if this is a test, they want you to obey. They want you to clean it and look and verify. They want a photo. The dashboard wants a photo upload. A record law twisted into the witness law. Documentation alters truth. Proof is consent. A traveler walked through the lobby then, a woman with a duffel bag, and she glanced toward the restrooms and headed that way without hesitation. Because why would she hesitate? A bathroom is a bathroom. A mirror is a mirror. I couldn't let her go in. I couldn't. Not after the man earlier. Not after the stall voice. Not after the handprint with too many fingers. Ma'am, I called, and my voice came out too sharp. Restrooms closed. Plumbing issue. She frowned. Since when? Since tonight, I said, and stepped between her and the door, keeping my body angled so the restroom glass couldn't catch my face through the doorway. My badge lanyard slapped my chest, and sweat slicked my palms. She looked me over like I was the problem. I'm not driving another mile. I need a bathroom. I'll open the other side, I said, even though I knew it was locked, because a lie can buy time. Just give me a minute. Her eyes narrowed. She wasn't a fool. She was tired. The restroom door behind me clicked to occupied again, without anyone touching it. The woman heard it and froze. Did you lock that? No, I said, and the admission was a mistake because it made the situation real. Please, just wait in the lobby. She backed up slowly, duffel bag strap creaking, and I watched her retreat like I was watching someone walk away from a cliff edge they didn't know existed. That was the pro-social act that cost me a resource I couldn't afford. Time. My route app flashed a warning. Assignment overdue. Compliance window closing. The system was pressuring me with a measurable deadline, and the threat wasn't just termination. The threat was reassignment. Vacancy coverage. I grabbed the binder and the blank printout with the gray rectangle and ran to the lobby office where the security monitor sat, a dusty screen that showed 4 camera feeds. My hand shook as I hit the power button because the laminated card had warned not to reboot if the feed froze, but the monitor wasn't frozen yet. The screen lit with a low hum, and the camera grid appeared. Lobby, parking lot, hallway, restroom entrance. The restroom feed was a loop, not a frozen frame, A loop, about 20 seconds repeating, and the time code in the corner kept counting forward, even while the same traveler crossed the lobby twice. The same vending machine light flickered twice. The same restroom door indicator changed twice. I leaned in close, eyes burning, and my reflection showed faintly on the monitor glass. A ghost overlay that made my stomach twist because it meant some surfaces still recognized me. On the restroom feed, the mirror was visible through the open doorway, and in it, a figure stood behind the sinks. The figure held my posture. It wore my jacket. It did not have a face. My phone buzzed again, and the sound made me flinch because it came through, despite no signal, like the device had become an extension of the rest stop system. A new notification appeared from an internal messaging thread I didn't remember subscribing to, and the text was bland. Verification required. Remove obstruction. Confirm witness continuity. A theory bait line formed in my head, ugly and plausible. Maybe it isn't the building. Maybe it's compliance. I made a decision like an investigator, because if I was going to lose anyway, I'd rather lose with proof. The human hypothesis was that this was a contractor-installed camera system meant to deter vandalism and track staff, and the bizarre behavior was a software bug or a deliberate trap. The other hypothesis was that the mirror, the camera, the witness function, whatever it was, had an enforcement behavior that looked like policy, because policy gave it cover. I chose the human hypothesis because choosing it felt safer, and I ran a test. The lobby office had a manual logbook, the old kind for client audits when the app fails. I flipped it open and found the page for RS-12. My pen hovered and my hand shook because writing my name felt like feeding a machine. So I didn't write my name. I wrote a dash. Then the badge ID the contractor assigned me, the one that isn't tied to any real agency, just a fake code, 7C-14, close enough to the sync tag to make me feel sick. Under that, I wrote, mirror feed loop, no reflection, tamper dot lens, covered. I snapped a photo of the log page with my phone, because a record inside a device is still a record. And then I watched the security monitor as I did it, because I wanted to see if the system reacted. On the monitor, the faceless figure in the mirror turned its head toward the camera, and the time code stuttered. On my phone, the photo I took saved as a black rectangle with 3 gray dots. My test had hard proof, and it disproved the comforting version of the human hypothesis. It wasn't just software misbehaving. It was aware of documentation. Ray's voice cut through again, weaker now, like her radio battery was dying. I can't get back in, she whispered. They just emailed me a termination notice. The subject line is vacancy coverage update. That doesn't make sense. That's not HR language. A cold line of anger ran through me because the system had reached outside the rest stop now. It had touched Ray. Forward it, I said. Send it to your personal. Take screenshots. I tried, Ray said, and her voice broke. It vanished from sent. It's like it moved. Chain of custody hint. Evidence slipping away. I stared at the monitor loop, at the faceless figure wearing my jacket, and I felt the shape of the trap. The mirror protocol wasn't for safety. It was for harvesting. Sanitize the glass and verify under full light. Look again. Confirm witness continuity. Say your name. Obedience creates consent. Consent creates assignment. The rest stop didn't need a monster. It needed a workforce. A sudden urge to run hit, primal and loud, and for a second I saw myself bolting to my car, driving until sunrise, pretending I didn't see what I saw. My car would probably make it if I didn't stop. I could ignore the shop bill. I could ignore Ray's termination. I could ignore the duffel bag woman and hope she found another bathroom. I couldn't. That was the constructive residue part of me. The one that still believes leaving a warning matters, even if nobody listens. My eyes fell on the out-of-service tape roll in the binder pocket, and a plan formed that felt stupidly simple. Label it, contain it, make it official enough to slow it down. The contractor carried standardized red tags for fixtures taken offline, each with a little icon and a code printed small. One tag sat in the binder pocket, unused, with its adhesive still clean. The tag code read O-3, and the icon was a little I crossed out. I didn't love that coincidence. A stylized I crossed out is a symbol. Symbols travel. I peeled the backing with trembling fingers, and the adhesive smell was sharp, chemical, real. I walked to the restroom entrance, eyes down, and slapped the tag over the mirror area through the doorway without stepping fully inside, like placing a sign on a dangerous animal's cage. The lobby lights flickered once, and every camera feed on the monitor went black for a heartbeat. When they returned, the restroom feed was no longer looping. The time code jumped forward 5 minutes like it had been reset. The faceless figure was gone. Competence win, cost paid in evidence. My phone buzzed again, and this time the contractor app showed a red banner. Fixture offline unauthorized. Compliance violation logged. The system had noticed the label, and it hated the label because labels are control. Ray whispered through the radio, barely audible now. "What are you doing?" "Trying to keep someone from walking in," I said, and my voice shook with fatigue more than fear now. "Listen, if I get reassigned, if my badge becomes vacancy coverage, you need to warn the next route tech. Tell them the mirror isn't a mirror. Tell them don't say their name." "How?" Ray asked, and the question was a knife because she meant it literally. "They locked me out. They can lock anyone out." The lobby window reflected the parking lot, and for a second I saw my car in the glass, and behind it, a second set of headlights pulling in. A new traveler, a new person who would trust a bathroom. I needed a warning that didn't rely on a dashboard. The oldest method, paper in a binder, graffiti on a wall, a physical mark that outlives a system update. I grabbed my scrap paper, the one I'd written earlier, and I walked back to the graffiti spot by the restroom door. My hand shook as I pressed the paper against the wall and wrote over the scratched words with thick marker from the binder kit, making them darker, harder to miss. "Keep eyes down." Under it, I added a line in block letters, "Do not say your name." A pause hit as I wrote, and I realized my marker squeaks were the only sound. The vending machine hum had stopped again. The lobby TV screen in the corner had gone black. Even the highway hiss through glass seemed muted. Silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it means attention. The restroom door indicator window flicked from vacant to occupied, and a second later, the lobby office printer spit out a page on its own, the motor whining like it was alive. The page slid onto the tray and stopped. One sentence sat in the center, printed in faint gray like the toner was running out. "Verification required. Say your name." I stared at it, and something inside me went cold and calm, because this was the point where a system stops pretending to be neutral. The headlights outside grew brighter as the new traveler approached the entrance, and my duty narrowed until it was a single action. Stop them, warn them, leave proof. I stepped into the lobby doorway and raised my hand, palm out like a traffic cop, like a person trying to control a flow that doesn't want to be controlled. The traveler was a man in a hoodie, adult, tired, and he looked at me like I was about to ask for money. "Restrooms closed," I said. "Use the one across the highway." He frowned. "The sign says open." "Sign's wrong," I said, and my voice went hard. "Don't look in the mirror." His expression shifted from annoyance to suspicion, and I hated that because it meant he might push past me just to prove he could. "I'm serious," I added, softer, because fear makes a person sound crazy if they don't anchor it. "I'm maintenance. Something's wrong with the glass." The man hesitated, then glanced toward the restrooms, and I saw his eyes catch the graffiti words on the wall. "Keep eyes down. Do not say your name." That stopped him. Sometimes people listen when the warning looks like it predates you. He backed up a step. "What is this place?" "A trap dressed like policy," I said, and the line came out clean enough to be quotable, and I hated that too. His phone lit in his hand, and he turned away, muttering, heading back out to his car. Relief hit, real and sharp. Then the lobby window reflected him as he walked, reflected his hoodie, reflected his shoulders, and it reflected me standing in the doorway. Except my reflection in the window was still wrong. It lagged by half a step, just like the mirror had, and the head angle was off, and the eyes in the reflection weren't on the traveler. They were on the restroom door. The system hadn't lost me. It had copied me. Ray's radio transmission came through one last time, thin and broken. "I found something," she whispered, "in the shared drive, a folder I never had access to. It just appeared. It's labeled vacancy coverage. There's a scan of your badge in it. There's also a photo of a mirror with that eye symbol. It's not from RS-12. It's from a different rest area, different state." Shared universe hint, and my stomach dropped because it meant the trap wasn't local. It was networked. "Send it to me," I said, then realized how stupid that sounded. "Print it, put it in a binder, tape it under your desk, anything physical." Ray's laugh came out like a sob. "They'll know." "They already do," I said, and my voice steadied because admitting that felt like taking away their power. "Don't say your name to the system. Don't do their verification. That's the whole trick." My phone buzzed again. The contractor app flashed a countdown bar, red, shrinking, pushing, compliance window closing. I had to make a final choice, and it wasn't about the restroom anymore. It was about whether I would obey the assignment or break it in a way that left residue. I walked into the lobby office and opened the manual logbook again, and this time I wrote a full sentence, careful and plain, leaving out my name like it was poison. "Mirror module harvest staff. Do not verify. Do not sanitize. Cover lens at tamper dot. Warn the public." Writing that felt like defiance, and defiance has a cost. My badge lanyard went heavy on my neck like it was being pulled, and the badge itself warmed against my chest in a way plastic shouldn't. The door to the restroom corridor clicked. Occupied. Vacant. Occupied. The indicator window flipped faster, like the system was running through states, trying to decide which one trapped me. A soft sound came from the restroom hall, and my muscles went tight because I expected cough, expected voice, expected page turn. Instead, I heard my own stress habit amplified. A double tap. The sound of a badge edge clicking twice against a reader plate, the way I'd been rubbing it all night, except it was coming from the hall, not from my hands. I froze, and my heart hammered. And then I understood the last piece with a clarity that made me sick. The mirror wasn't just copying my face, it was copying my behaviors. It was learning how to be me well enough that a system would accept it as staff, and once it had that, my real body didn't matter. A survivor question formed, blunt and ugly. If the system can duplicate me, where does the duplicate go when it clocks out? The restroom hall went silent again, and then the lobby office printer whined to life one more time. A page slid out, and this time the toner was darker, the letters clearer. The note ended with, "If you've seen that symbol before, don't ignore it." Seeing that line in print made my stomach flip because it was exactly the kind of directive a person would write to warn others. And it was also exactly the kind of directive a system would counterfeit to spread itself. I grabbed the page and shoved it into the binder anyway, because even counterfeit warnings can guide someone away from glass. The rest stop doors opened with a soft whoosh, and cold night air rolled in. My car sat under a lamppost, and the rear-view mirror inside it waited like an accusation. I kept my eyes low as I walked, because keep eyes down was no longer superstition. It was survival. The driver's seat fabric felt rough under my fingertips, grounding me, and I sat without looking at any reflective surface. My phone buzzed one last time, and I glanced down. The contractor app showed my assignment updated, coverage transferred. To whom? I started the engine, and the radio came on with static, then cut to perfect silence, and my hand shook on the steering wheel, because a system doesn't transfer coverage to nobody. It transfers it to the next compliant face. As I pulled out of the lot, the lobby window reflected my car leaving. It did not reflect me in the driver's seat. At home later, in my own bathroom, I didn't look in the mirror. I washed my hands with my eyes on the sink, and my fingers found a tiny raised circle on the bottom edge of the glass frame, a tamper dot with 3 pinpricks. Keep eyes down.